The sun hung low in the sky, casting golden light over Brooklyn Heights as Keanu Reeves strolled through the neighborhood with Buddy, the loyal pit bull he had grown attached to while filming John Wick. The dog's powerful frame moved with effortless grace beside him, his tongue lolling out as he panted in the summer heat. Keanu, dressed casually in a dark t-shirt, jeans, and sunglasses, enjoyed the rare moment of peace. He had always loved New York, the energy, the diversity, the way the city pulsed with life. But today, the heat was relentless. The pavement radiated warmth beneath their feet, and Keanu knew Buddy needed water soon. He scanned the street for a public fountain and spotted one near a biker bar with a rusted metal sign that read iron and ash. The place had an edge to it. Motorcycles lined up outside, their chrome glinting under the sun, while groups of men and women dressed in leather lounged near the entrance. The air smelled of cigarettes, gasoline, and stale beer. Keanu hesitated for a second. He wasn't one to judge a place by its cover, but there was something about iron and ash that made his instincts tingle. Still, Buddy's well-being came first. The dog's tongue was practically dragging on the pavement now. "Come on, boy," Keanu murmured, leading him toward the fountain. As Buddy lapped up the cool water, a biker approached, a man in his late 40s with a thick beard, tattooed arms, and a weathered leather vest adorned with patches. He grinned, his expression surprisingly friendly. "Nice dog," the man said, nodding toward Buddy. "Pit bulls get a bad rap, huh? Same as us bikers. People think we're all trouble." Keanu studied him for a moment before offering a small smile. "Yeah, people tend to fear what they don't understand." The biker chuckled. "Ain't that the truth?" The exchange was civil, almost pleasant, but the atmosphere around them felt off. Other bikers were watching from a distance, their expressions unreadable. A woman at the bar's entrance, blonde hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing a waitress apron over ripped jeans, seemed to be observing the scene with concern. Keanu decided not to linger. He gave Buddy a pat and stood. "Thanks for the chat. We should get going." The biker nodded, but as Keanu turned, he caught a flicker of something in the man's eyes. Something calculating. The moment they stepped away, the laughter behind them carried a sharper edge. Keanu walked past the bar, heading toward a quieter street, but before he could get far, the blonde waitress jogged up beside him. "Hey," she called out, a little breathless. "That's a beautiful dog you've got there." Keanu slowed his pace, turning to face her. "Thanks. His name's Buddy." She crouched slightly, extending a hand for Buddy to sniff before giving him a few gentle pats. "He's sweet. She hesitated, glancing back toward the bar. "I saw you talking to Rick. Just be careful around here. Not all of them are as friendly as they seem." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Rick, huh? The guy with the tattoos?" She nodded. "He's complicated. Some of them are decent guys, but others," she trailed off, biting her lip. "Let's just say I wouldn't hang around here too long if I were you." Keanu appreciated the warning, though it didn't exactly put him at ease. "Thanks. I was just passing through." Before the conversation could go any further, a loud commotion erupted behind them. Keanu turned just in time to see a group of bikers arguing near the entrance of Iron and Ash. One of them, a tall, wiry man with a shaved head, was gesturing angrily at Maggie. "Stay out of things that don't concern you," he growled, his voice sharp. Maggie stiffened, her jaw tightening. "I'm just doing my job." The tension in the air thickened. A few other bikers stepped forward, clearly on Maggie's side, but the situation was on the verge of boiling over. Keanu instinctively moved to step in, but Maggie shot him a quick look and subtly shook her head. He got the message. This was her fight. Still, he didn't like leaving her in the middle of whatever was happening. He hesitated for a moment before turning away. Buddy, sensing the unease in the air, stayed close by his side. As they walked down the street, the feeling that something wasn't right stayed with him. Keanu and Buddy eventually found a small cafe with outdoor seating. It was tucked away from the main road, surrounded by leafy green trees that provided some relief from the summer heat. He ordered an iced coffee and a bowl of water for Buddy, then settled into a chair, letting himself relax. To his surprise, Maggie appeared again a few minutes later, this time carrying a tray. "Didn't think I'd see you here," Keanu remarked as she set his drink down. She smirked. I work here part-time. Gotta pay the bills somehow. Keanu nodded. You okay? Back at the bar, I mean? She sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. Yeah, I'll manage. Those guys think they own the place, but not everyone bows down to them. Before Keanu could respond, Buddy suddenly let out a low, warning growl. His ears pinned back and his muscles tensed. Keanu turned his head, just in time to see a familiar figure stepping toward them. It was Rick. The biker smirked, his eyes filled with something cruel. Without warning, he drew his boot back and delivered a sharp, deliberate kick to Buddy's side. A sickening thud echoed through the cafe. Buddy yelped in pain, stumbling sideways before catching himself. The cafe fell silent. The patrons froze, shocked by the sheer brutality of the act. Keanu shot up from his seat so fast that his chair clattered to the ground. A slow, burning fury unfurled inside him, unlike anything he had felt in a long time. His hands clenched into fists. His heartbeat roared in his ears. Rick met his gaze, unfazed. Relax, man, he sneered. It's just a dog. Keanu stepped forward, his voice dangerously low. You just made a big mistake. For the first time, Rick hesitated. The easy smirk faltered. The predator had just realized too late that he had provoked the wrong man. And Keanu Reeves wasn't about to let this slide. The tension in the cafe was suffocating. Every set of eyes was locked on Keanu and Rick, waiting for what would happen next. The biker's smug expression wavered slightly, as if he finally realized that the man standing in front of him wasn't just some random dog owner. Keanu's eyes were locked onto his, cold and calculating, his breathing slow and controlled. Buddy, still shaken, let out a low growl, but Keanu placed a steadying hand on his back. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the restrained fury surging through his veins. Keanu stepped forward, closing the space between them. The smirk on Rick's face returned, an attempt to mask the sliver of unease creeping up his spine. You got a problem, Hollywood? Rick sneered, voice dripping with mockery. Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, with deliberate slowness, he grabbed the collar of Rick's leather vest and pulled him close, their faces inches apart. His voice was low, steady, dangerous. You don't touch my dog, Keanu said, his grip tightening. Ever. The cafe remained deathly silent. Even the hum of the city outside seemed to fade away. Rick, perhaps emboldened by the attention, let out a dry chuckle. Or what? You gonna put me in one of your movies? He leaned in, his breath thick with whiskey and arrogance. Let me give you a little advice, Reeves. This ain't Hollywood. Out here, guys like me don't take orders from. Before he could finish, Keanu's grip tightened, cutting off his words. The biker's smirk faltered into something closer to panic. The moment stretched, heavy with unspoken threats. Then, before things could escalate further, a firm hand landed on Keanu's arm. Let him go, Maggie whispered, her voice urgent. Keanu hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to make the man pay for what he did to Buddy. But he knew how these situations worked. If he threw the first punch, it wouldn't matter that Rick was the aggressor. Keanu would be the one in trouble. Slowly, reluctantly, he released Rick's vest. Rick stumbled back, coughing slightly, his face darkening with fury and humiliation. You'll regret that, he muttered, brushing off his vest as if to reclaim some of his pride. Both of you will. Then, with one final glare, he turned on his heel and stalked off. Keanu didn't move. He stood there for a long moment, his body still taut with anger, his pulse thrumming against his skin. Maggie exhaled shakily. That guy's bad news, Keanu. He won't let this go. Keanu finally turned to her, his expression unreadable. Neither will I. Keanu sat back down, trying to shake off the encounter, but his mind remained clouded with tension. He reached down to check on Buddy, gently running a hand over his side. You okay, boy? Keanu murmured. Buddy whined softly but leaned into Keanu's touch, his tail giving a slight wag. Maggie stood nearby, rubbing her arms as if trying to shake off the chill of what just happened. You should be careful, Keanu, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Rick's got connections. He's not just some bar thug. He and his crew run a lot of shady business around here. Keanu took a sip of his now warm coffee, his thoughts already racing ahead. He wasn't afraid of Rick. He had dealt with far worse in his life. But what concerned him was the way Rick had walked away. Not like a man who had been put in his place, but like someone who was already planning his next move. He glanced around the cafe. People were still staring, whispering amongst themselves. He could feel the unease in the air. "Yeah," Keanu muttered. "I figured as much." Just as he was about to suggest heading out, Buddy suddenly let out a sharp, strangled whimper. Keanu's head snapped down. Buddy's legs trembled. His body shuddered violently. His breathing turned shallow. Panic slammed into Keanu like a freight train. "Buddy." His voice was urgent now. He crouched, placing both hands on the dog. "Hey, stay with me, boy." Buddy's body convulsed. His eyes rolled back slightly. Foam gathered at the edges of his mouth. "Shit," Maggie gasped. "What's happening?" Keanu's heart pounded. This wasn't just a reaction to stress. Something was wrong, very wrong. He looked around wildly. "I need water. Now." A busboy rushed over, handing him a glass. Keanu tilted it toward Buddy's mouth, but the dog barely reacted. His limbs jerked as if his body was no longer under his control. Then it hit Keanu like a bolt of lightning. The kick. Rick hadn't just kicked Buddy. He had poisoned him. The realization sent a fresh wave of fury and terror through him. Maggie knelt beside him. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You think?" "Yeah," Keanu said through clenched teeth. He scooped Buddy into his arms, lifting him as gently as he could. "I'm not taking any chances." The cafe customers parted as he rushed through, pushing past the doors and onto the street. His legs burned as he sprinted, but he didn't stop, didn't slow. Buddy's life depended on every second. Keanu didn't know how long he ran, only that the world blurred around him. Every breath felt like a battle against time. Buddy's body was still twitching in his arms, his fur damp with sweat. "Hold on, Buddy," Keanu panted. "You're gonna be okay." A few pedestrians turned to stare, but he ignored them. His only focus was the nearest veterinary clinic. He skidded to a stop in front of a building with a bright red cross painted above the entrance. Without hesitation, he shoved the doors open. "I need help." His voice was sharp, commanding. The receptionist, a young woman with dark curls, looked up in alarm. When she saw the limp dog in his arms, she jumped to her feet. "Dr. Harper," she called. Within seconds, a middle-aged veterinarian in a white coat rushed out, his sharp eyes assessing the situation. "What happened?" Dr. Harper asked, already gesturing for Keanu to place Buddy on a nearby examination table. "He was poisoned," Keanu said, his voice like steel. "I don't know what kind of toxin, but it happened less than 15 minutes ago." Dr. Harper nodded briskly. "We'll do everything we can. Stay here." And with that, he and his team disappeared into the back room, Buddy lying still on the stretcher. Keanu clenched his fists. He had never felt this helpless before. His dog, his friend, was fighting for his life, and someone was going to pay for it. Keanu sat in the waiting area of the veterinary clinic, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. The sterile smell of antiseptic and the distant hum of medical equipment filled the air, but all he could focus on was the closed door separating him from Buddy. His hands were still trembling, not from exhaustion, but from rage. He replayed everything in his mind, piecing it together like a puzzle with jagged edges. Rick's smirk, his veiled threat, Buddy's sudden collapse. The bastard had done this on purpose. The door finally swung open, and Dr. Harper emerged, his expression unreadable. Keanu stood immediately. "How is he?" Keanu's voice was low, tight with tension. Dr. Harper exhaled, wiping his hands on his coat. "He's stable for now. We pumped his stomach and administered activated charcoal to absorb any remaining toxins." Keanu's jaw clenched. "What was it?" Dr. Harper's face darkened. "A mix of narcotics and rat poison. A particularly nasty combination." The words hit Keanu like a gut punch. He had suspected poison, but hearing it confirmed sent a fresh wave of fury through him. "This wasn't an accident," Dr. Harper continued. "Someone did this deliberately. Keanu nodded stiffly. I know who. Dr. Harper studied him for a moment, as if weighing whether to ask for more details. Instead, he simply said, Buddy is lucky. A dose like that could have been fatal. The thought made Keanu's stomach churn. Can I see him? Dr. Harper nodded. But just for a moment. He needs rest. Keanu followed him into the treatment area, where Buddy lay on a cushioned table, and four hooked into his foreleg. His breathing was slow but steady, his body still weak from the poison. Keanu knelt beside him, resting a gentle hand on his fur. Hey, Buddy, he whispered. Buddy's eyes fluttered open, and his tail gave the faintest wag. Keanu swallowed hard. You're strong. You hear me? You're gonna get through this. The dog let out a weak but familiar huff, and Keanu felt something inside him crack. He wouldn't let this slide. Standing, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. After 2 rings, a deep, gravelly voice answered. Keanu Reeves. To what do I owe the honor? Keanu exhaled. I need your help, Hank. Sheriff Hank Morrison wasn't the kind of man who wasted time on pleasantries. As soon as Keanu relayed what had happened, Hank's tone turned serious. You're telling me some lowlife biker poisoned your dog? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Keanu said, pacing outside the clinic. Rick runs with the gang at Iron and Ash. Hank sighed. That bar's been trouble for years. We've been trying to pin something solid on them, but they cover their tracks well. Keanu's grip tightened on his phone. Then maybe it's time to dig deeper. There was a pause. Then, Hank said, You're not planning on going there alone, are you? Keanu didn't answer. Damn it, Keanu, Hank muttered. You're not John Wick. Keanu's lips curled into a dry smirk. I know. A sigh. All right. I'll put some feelers out, see what I can find on this Rick guy. But stay put, at least until I call you back. Keanu ended the call, shoving his phone into his pocket. Stay put? Not a chance. He stepped back inside the clinic, making his way to the front desk. The receptionist looked up, startled. If anyone comes asking about Buddy or me, Keanu said, voice firm, you didn't see us. The young woman blinked, then nodded slowly. Understood. With one last glance toward the treatment room, Keanu slipped out into the night. He had work to do. Iron and Ash looked even more ominous at night. The neon sign flickered, casting eerie shadows across the sidewalk. The deep rumble of motorcycles echoed in the distance, mingling with drunken laughter and the distant wail of sirens. Keanu adjusted the hood of his jacket, keeping his face partially obscured as he stepped inside. The bar reeked of sweat, beer, and bad decisions. No one noticed him at first. The place was a chaotic mess. Pool games in the back, a couple of fights breaking out near the bar, and a group of bikers huddled together in whispered conversation. Keanu scanned the room until his gaze landed on the bartender, a man in his 50s with a scar across his cheek. He approached, leaning against the counter. Whiskey. Neat. The bartender glanced up, narrowing his eyes. Ain't seen you here before. Keanu gave a small shrug. Passing through. The bartender grunted, but poured the drink. Keanu took it, swirling the amber liquid before setting it down untouched. Looking for a guy, Keanu said casually. Rick? The bartender stiffened just slightly before masking it with a lazy smirk. Lot of Ricks in here. Keanu smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The one who kicks dogs for fun. The air around them shifted. A few nearby conversations quieted. You should leave, the bartender muttered, wiping the counter unnecessarily. Keanu didn't move. Tell me about the gang, he pressed, voice low. The bartender's eyes flickered toward a side door. You don't want to get mixed up in this. I already am. The bartender hesitated, then exhaled. They're into more than just bar fights and intimidation. Drugs. Illegal fights. Maybe worse. Keanu's jaw tightened. Where's Rick? The bartender swallowed. Out back. But Keanu was already moving. The back alley was dark, but Keanu spotted him instantly. Rick, leaning against a motorcycle, laughing with 2 other bikers. Keanu stepped forward, making his presence known. Rick looked up. For a moment, confusion flickered in his expression. Then, recognition dawned. and that damn smirk returned. Well, well, Rick drawled, pushing off his bike. Look who came back for more. Keanu didn't hesitate. He walked straight up to Rick, locked eyes with him, and said in a voice that sent a chill through the night air, "You don't mess with a man's dog." Before Rick could react, red and blue lights flooded the alley. Sheriff Hank Morrison's voice rang out, "Hands where we can see them." Chaos erupted. The moment the red and blue lights flashed against the grimy walls of the alley, the bikers froze. Then, as if on cue, they scattered like cockroaches. Rick, momentarily stunned, cursed under his breath before making a run for it. But Keanu was faster. With a sharp, calculated movement, Keanu grabbed Rick's arm and twisted it behind his back. Rick let out a pained grunt, trying to shake free, but Keanu didn't let go. "Where do you think you're going?" Keanu hissed, his voice dangerously low. Rick thrashed, but Keanu tightened his grip. "Let go, you." Before Rick could finish his sentence, the alley was swarmed with officers, led by Sheriff Hank Morrison. "Well, damn," Hank muttered, taking in the scene. "Didn't I tell you to stay put?" Keanu gave him a flat look. "You took too long." Hank exhaled sharply but didn't argue. Instead, he turned to his deputies. "Round them up." The officers moved fast, tackling bikers to the ground, cuffing them before they could slip away. A few tried to fight back, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. Rick, realizing he was trapped, sneered. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "You don't know who you're messing with." Keanu leaned in slightly, his voice calm but razor sharp. "No, Rick, you don't know who you messed with." Rick's bravado wavered. He swallowed, eyes darting around for an escape that didn't exist. One of the deputies cuffed him and shoved him toward a patrol car. As Rick was forced into the back seat, Keanu watched, his expression unreadable. "Good work," Hank said, coming up beside him. Keanu didn't take his eyes off Rick. "This doesn't end here. There are others like him, hurting animals, hurting people." Hank nodded. "And we'll take them down too." Keanu finally exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders just slightly. The battle was won. But there was still one thing left to do. "Come on," Hank said, giving Keanu a knowing look. "Let's get you back to your dog." The ride back to the clinic was quiet. Keanu stared out the window, mind replaying the night's events over and over. Justice had been served, but none of it would matter if Buddy didn't make it. As soon as they pulled up, Keanu didn't wait for the car to stop completely. He was already out the door, heading straight inside. Dr. Harper looked up as he entered. "He's still hanging in there," he said before Keanu could ask. "He's stable, but weak." Keanu released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Can I see him?" Dr. Harper nodded. "Go ahead." Keanu moved quickly to the recovery room. The sight of Buddy lying motionless on the padded table sent a pang of pain through his chest. "Hey, Buddy," Keanu whispered, kneeling beside him. Buddy's eyes fluttered open. He let out a soft, tired whine and weakly wagged his tail. Keanu smiled, relief washing over him. "You scared me. You know that?" He ran a hand gently over Buddy's fur. "But you're a fighter. You're gonna be okay." As if in response, Buddy nudged his head against Keanu's hand. It was small, but it was enough. Keanu felt his throat tighten. "Rest up, okay? We've got a lot more walks to take." A familiar voice from behind made him turn. "That dog's lucky to have you." Keanu glanced over his shoulder to see Hank standing in the doorway. Keanu smirked. "I think I'm the lucky one." Hank nodded. "Rick and his crew are being processed. Turns out they were linked to multiple illegal operations. That place is getting shut down for good." Keanu nodded. It was good news. But right now, the only victory that mattered was the steady rise and fall of Buddy's breathing. Hank gave him a knowing look. "You staying here tonight?" Keanu didn't hesitate. "Yeah." Hank grinned. "Figured." He clapped Keanu on the shoulder. "Try to get some rest, man. You earned it." Keanu only nodded, his attention already back on Buddy. For the first time that night, he let himself relax. The morning sun filtered through the clinic window, casting a soft glow over Buddy's sleeping form. Keanu sat in the chair beside him, stiff from staying up all night. But he didn't care. Dr. Harper walked in, holding a clipboard. "Good news," he said with a small smile. "Buddy's out of immediate danger. His vitals are strong, and he's responding well to treatment." Keanu exhaled, relief washing over him. "Thank you." Dr. Harper nodded. "He'll need rest, but he's a tough one. He'll make a full recovery." Keanu glanced down at Buddy, who, as if sensing the conversation, lifted his head slightly. "Yeah," Keanu murmured, scratching behind his ears. "I know." Later that afternoon, after filling out discharge papers and getting a list of care instructions, Keanu finally took Buddy home. As they stepped out into the sunlight, Buddy, still a little weak but determined, took slow, deliberate steps beside him. "One day at a time, Buddy," Keanu said, smiling. News of the biker gang's takedown spread quickly. Reports credited law enforcement for shutting down illegal activities in the neighborhood. But Keanu didn't care about the headlines. His real victory was watching Buddy wag his tail again, knowing that after everything they'd been through, they had come out stronger. As they walked down the street, side by side, Keanu made a silent promise. No one would ever hurt Buddy again. And if they tried, well, they'd have to deal with him. As the days passed, Buddy continued to recover, growing stronger with each step he took beside Keanu. The wounds, both physical and emotional, began to heal, but the memory of that night never truly faded. It wasn't just about the violence, the cruelty, or the danger. It was about the unwavering bond between a man and his dog, a connection forged through trust, loyalty, and an unbreakable promise of protection. News stations and online articles praised the police for dismantling the biker gang, restoring peace to the neighborhood. Some even speculated about Keanu's involvement, but he never confirmed or denied it. He didn't care about the attention. Justice had been served, and more importantly, Buddy was safe. That was all that mattered. One evening, as Keanu sat on his porch with Buddy curled up at his feet, he gazed out at the quiet street. The world was still filled with cruelty, but it was also filled with kindness, resilience, and the will to fight for what's right. Buddy lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting Keanu's. And in that silent moment, no words were needed. They had been through hell, but they had come out stronger. Keanu reached down, ruffling Buddy's fur. "Come on, let's go for a walk." Buddy wagged his tail and stood, ready to follow. Because no matter what dangers lay ahead, they would always face them together. Thank you for sticking with us through this thrilling journey. We hope you enjoyed the story of Keanu and Buddy, a tale of loyalty, justice, and an unbreakable bond. If you love this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more amazing content. Got thoughts on the story? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear what you think. And if you want more stories like this, let us know. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.